we get into the discussion, I would like to thank our partner, the Arconic Foundation. We have Margaret Cosentino joining us today from the foundation, but they are sponsoring this virtual discussion, and they have been a major sponsor and supporter to the Manufacturing Institute's Step Ahead initiative, which is all about empowering women in manufacturing. So a big shout out to them today, because this event would not be happening without their support. I also want to mention STEP, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Production Ahead. That's an initiative that the Institute is leading that was launched 6 years ago to highlight existing female talent in the manufacturing industry with a national award. Step Forward brings elements of the National Step Ahead initiative regionally into communities by showcasing the stories of women who represent the changing face of manufacturing through a panel discussion. And you can find more information about that on the Manufacturing Institute's website. But it is a fantastic program, and one that continues to grow. And that's what we want to discuss today, the diverse workforce, and hear from industry leaders who can share their stories and their company's best practices on how to recruit and retain women in manufacturing. Throughout today's discussion, I want to make sure that everyone is using the hashtag MFGWomen on Twitter to submit questions, comments, and of course we want to keep this virtual conversation flowing. So again, the hashtag is MFGWomen, and we look forward to your questions to be coming in. Before I turn it over to our wonderful panelists today to introduce themselves, I want to share a couple of important facts that I think, as we kind of set the discussion to get into it, facts that I think are pretty important for people to know. One is that women in manufacturing, women are manufacturing's largest pool of untapped talent. Across the total U.S. labor force, women earn more than half of the associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees in the U.S. But yet women represent 47% of the total U.S. labor force, and they make up only 29% of the manufacturing workforce. I think that those are some startling but interesting numbers, and certainly look forward to touching and having more discussion on that throughout today. But one other fact that I think is really interesting is that more than 70% of women indicate they would stay in manufacturing if they were to start their career today. So there is a lot of potential for the industry, and I think we've got some wonderful panelists today to talk about what those opportunities may be, where those interesting assignments may be, and to kind of describe what the industry is all about. So I want to quickly turn it over to our panelists today so that they can introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about what they do in their organization and why manufacturing is really important to them. I will tell you, these are female trailblazers in the manufacturing industry, all with unique stories to tell, and we're excited to get the conversation going. So, Margaret, I'd like to turn it over to you first to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the company you represent and why manufacturing is important to you.
Sure thing. And I want to say thank you to Erin and to the NAM for having us here today and for convening such a great event in conjunction with Manufacturing Day. I think, as you've mentioned, Arconic and the Arconic Foundation has a very proud partnership with the Manufacturing Institute. And some of these events and activities we'll talk about, like Step Ahead and Step Forward, are ones that we felt very strongly about, are really important ways for us to bring together our female leaders at Arconic, our rising stars and our peers and our friends in the industry, and really showcase how powerful it is to engage more women into the industry. So I'm Margaret Cosentino. As Erin said, I'm with Arconic. I am Vice President for Government Affairs and Defense, and so I have responsibility for all of the work that we do on a product and commercial side with our military partners and with the services. And then I also look after all of our government affairs activities here in Washington on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, manufacturing for us, we are a proud 128-year-old manufacturing company that's always pushing the envelope in terms of what can be achieved. And, you know, when I think about my job, particularly working with the warfighters, you know, it's so important to be able to bring to bear those really great skills, processes that we have as a company to really improve survivability and mobility and all the really important things that when you're sending your loved ones out into harm's way, those are possible because of what gets done at our plants and at other plants around the U.S. So thank you for having me today.
It's great to have you, Margaret. I want to turn to Millie Marshall now. She's the president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Indiana. Millie, it's wonderful to have you.
Yes, it's an honor to be here. So thank you very much for including me. As Erin said, I'm Millie Marshall, and I'm the president at the facility in Princeton, Indiana. We have about 10,000 team members on our campus. We produce the Highlander, the Sequoia, and the Sienna. I've been with Toyota for 26 years in a variety of functions, from started out in IT and HR, and then worked in a couple of our powertrain facilities. So as I said, it's really an honor to be here today. It's something that I'm very passionate about, STEM and females in manufacturing. So thank you for including me today.
You bet, Millie, and we look forward to hearing more from you in just a little bit. I want to introduce our third guest, Anissa Metheny, who's the president and owner of Pioneer Service Incorporated. Anissa, sorry about that. Nice to have you.
Hello, Erin. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you again for having me on this. This is an honor to be here among these wonderful panelists. I'm very humbled. Thank you again. Yeah, so my manufacturing, again, my name is Anissa Metheny, and I'm president and owner of Pioneer Service. I've been in manufacturing my entire life. My father was a machinist back in the early 60s. At the very young age of 11, he introduced me to machining. Family joke is that when girls get Barbie dolls, I got a Sunhouse grinder. So I've been very fortunate to have that hands-on experience at a very young age. My family continues to be in manufacturing. At age 23, back in 1993, I went into partnerships with my uncle and his wife. Because of family dynamics, as many family owners will can relate to, there's dynamics that you kind of want to be invited to Thanksgiving. So it's either you go to Thanksgiving or you work together. So I chose Thanksgiving dinner. And because of that, I went into business with my uncle and I asked him to be a silent partner, and he agreed. And that was back in '93. And we've been making parts ever since. We are Pioneer Service in Addison, Illinois, a CNC Swiss shop. We machine and Sunhouse grind precision parts, anything from the hinges on your door to automotive to medical device and oil and gas. And it's extremely rewarding to be a maker, like everyone on this panel, and women in manufacturing. It's something that we are very proud of, and in my family and as women.
Anissa, I think there is no question drive and passion come through just in that quick intro. We'll circle back to you in just a few minutes. Margaret, I do want to start the discussion with you. And I think, you know, for all who are watching out there, and I think, you know, the one thing people always like to hear, because it helps them kind of, I think it always helps me connect the dots. How did you end up in your role that you were in today? And, you know, you're a national leader for the industry. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I've been reflecting on it today and sort of thinking about the panel, because I would say that I unlike Anissa, I did not have sort of an early path to manufacturing, and I've sort of come into this world later, and I've learned a lot about all the wonderful things Arconic does in lightweight metals and aerospace and automotive, and that's been great, but I did not start young. So I think one of the great things, though, about manufacturing as an industry is that there really are a number of different paths you can take into this world and be successful. And for me, I mean, my background, my education is in foreign policy and in economics. And I started my career out working in Washington at a think tank, and I was doing a lot of research and writing and analytics around these big geopolitical issues. And from there, I went into work in consulting for a firm here in Washington, and I really focused on the aerospace and defense industry and helping companies to think about business development, go-to-market strategies, and by virtue of starting in a consulting venue, I worked with dozens of different companies, and I'm across industries, healthcare, financial services, you name it. But they were all sort of interested in the same end industry of aerospace and defense work. And, you know, by virtue of working with so many companies, I saw how important workforce development is, how important leadership is, culture, how these things truly impact bottom line. And so when a job opened up with one of my clients, Arconic, it was a no-brainer because I knew about the caliber of the people that I'd already worked with from an external capacity. Going in-house was very easy. And, you know, even in my time, I've been with Arconic now for about 3 years. I started working in a very customer-facing commercial role in business development. I've since taken on the government affairs function here in Washington. I get to do both. So it's been a really interesting, gratifying role, and working both with the business side and then with policymakers and customers. So it's been terrific.
That's great. Millie, how about you? How did you get to your position that you're in today?
Thank you, Erin. And mine is very similar to Margaret's. So I'm a little jealous of kids and certainly females that know what they want to be when they grow up. But I was going to be a horse trainer. So I kind of fell into this per se. I did not go to college after high school because I was going to be a horse trainer. I didn't need college to do that. However, I needed money to pay for my horse. So I started at a manufacturing company as an engineering clerk. And at some point in my mid-20s, I realized I'm either going to have to make some money to live on and give up the horses, or, you know, not be able to take care of myself financially. So I'm the T of STEM, technical. So I actually started out in IT, entry-level programmer, and progressed and started with Toyota at our flagship manufacturing facility in Georgetown, Kentucky in 1991 as, once again, an entry-level programmer. And however, as a programmer, the systems I was responsible for were the supply chain management. So I have a love of technical because of the problem solving, the analytical type work, but really working with people that are on the factory floor and the systems that support that. At that point, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Now, my career progressed, and at one point, I was asked to take over the division of human resources in North America, responsible for 26,000 team members. So people always ask, well, how did somebody from IT go to HR? But I think I heard Anissa say, and also Margaret, it was the coaching and the development that really intrigued me, but also that HR should be very process related, have systems and procedures in place, just like we have on the factory floor. So that was one of the things that I could bring to the human resource organization. In 2013, I was asked to go to a powertrain plant in Buffalo, West Virginia, where we build engines and transmissions, and I was named the first I hate saying this, but female president of a manufacturing facility for any type of Japanese or transplant company in 2014. And I rotated or transferred to Princeton, Indiana as of January 2017. So I've been in this role for 10 months. But the key thing I like about manufacturing is it's very much focused on problem solving. It's a challenge. Every day is something new. I like it because it's analytical. You have to think. And then, of course, the teamwork and communication, regardless of what functional area you are in, you know, you have to have that for success. But starting out, I will have to say the reason why I took the T or the technical route clearly was for the money. So, and then it kind of blossomed from there as I joined Toyota, and I got a lot of opportunities in different areas.
Well, Millie, I think the important question is, do you still ride horses?
No, I have the money now, but I don't have the time. But I do have a granddaughter. My children never took the interest, but I have a 4-year-old granddaughter that I'm hoping she's going to be the one that's going to get us back into it. But thank you for asking.
Yeah. So before I turn it over to you to answer that same question, I do want to remind people of our hashtag MFGWomen, and we are accepting questions and thoughts, so please do send them in. Anissa, tell us your story, obviously connected to your family, I would presume.
Yeah. Like I said in my introduction, at age 11, I was exposed to manufacturing, and I fell in love with it right away. I remember when I was a teenager, my dad wanted me to work in the office, and we compromised, and he put a bell out in the shop so I would hear the phone ring and be able to go answer the phone. And having big brothers and being the only sister, you know, the competitiveness, it kicked in. I love my family dearly, and they pushed me, and I strived to please. And it was, you know, it was a time for family too, which was unique, and because not everybody has a family business. So I understand that my situation is very special. But the process of seeing the company succeed from zero, from just my brothers and I being in the shop, and then having, you know, 50 employees and being a $10 million company was extremely rewarding. And leaving that, you know, business, I was making at the time, back in the early 90s, a 6-figure position in my early 20s. You know, looking back at it, people ask me all the time, you know, why would you leave that? And there was no animosity. There's nothing specific that I can say. It is my family, and I love them dearly, but I was limited. And I didn't want that limitation. And being a girl, you know, even if my family accepted me, the outsiders I was always daddy's little girl. I was always the owner's daughter. So obviously I'm here because of that. And I stayed because of that. And I just needed to shake that off and find my own niche. Hence going into business with my uncle in '93, and having him as a silent partner really enabled me to want to please him, to want to prove everyone wrong, and obviously wanting to succeed. And, you know, going into a shop floor, you know, I say it all the time, I go into a shop floor, I'm more comfortable on a shop floor than I am in the mall. So, and it's because of the history. So I embrace those, you know, those years, and I take them, you know, I'm very grateful for that. And that's enabled me to be a bridge between upper management and the shop floor today. And so that has, I think, made me a better leader, understanding the processes, understanding the challenges that they face on the shop floor, and at the same time, understanding having to meet the numbers and make that customer happy, and the marketing and the financial end as well. So the experience that I had as a child has definitely helped me throughout the last 25 years being the president owner of this company. You know, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of on-the-job training.
Anissa, you mentioned you were exposed to manufacturing at a very young age of 11. We have Tony, who's a live viewer, who wants to know, how do we attract the next workforce for girls in elementary school? Margaret, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's a great question because, you know, just the earlier you get kids excited about these things and about the possibilities, you know, the better. And I really have to hand it to the Arconic Foundation of this one because, you know, I think for us, one of the things that we found to be very successful, we hope down the line as kids sort of grow up and choose their careers, but we've really taken a very targeted approach in terms of who we partner with, you know, in and around our plants that focus on high school kids, but also grade school kids. And we have a great, we're about to announce a great partnership we have in Ohio with the YWCA that targets young women in sort of the 6th, 7th, 8th grade range and getting them excited about coming, you know, into the plant to see what we do, getting them excited about the possibilities of STEM. I think, you know, sort of getting them to feel those competitive juices that Anissa talked about and sort of being able to run your own thing and to build something. So I think, you know, it has to be, you know, it has to be targeted, right? And you have to go out to those communities and to schools and get folks excited about it. And I think it's been a great partnership for us through our foundation of getting that exposure and getting the word out, getting people into the plants, and also getting some of our senior leaders out to the schools to talk about the exciting careers that exist there.
That's fantastic. Millie?
Yes.
Millie?
Here at Toyota, we started out like most companies focusing on high school and realized that was too late, regardless of gender. So we are actually reaching out to elementary school age children. And the way that we do that is through something as simple as a tour here within the manufacturing plant. That is one way. We support robotic teams and even something as simple as Lego teams. But you have to partner with the school organization and tell the story of STEM and why it's important. Specifically for females, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that once females get to puberty, a lot of them will lose interest in STEM. And the reason for that, both from an educational and then perhaps for a career, and the reason for that is they lose confidence. A lot of folks, whether it's intentional or unintentional, still think of manufacturing as dirty, unsafe, you know, your grandfather's way of working back in the 60s. So the key is to branch out to the school systems or other organizations that support things that interest children at the elementary school age, like I said, Legos or robotics, and then have people that can go and encourage them. And, you know, as they get older, then they're starting to think a little bit about what they're going to do for their college degree and perhaps their career. And we all, I'm sure every single one of us on this call will say that manufacturing, number one, there's a lot of open full-time jobs, but in addition, manufacturing pays more generally and better benefit package. So it's a great career. I think we just have to get the story out, and we've got to do it much sooner, as you mentioned, Erin, than high school. It's got to go all the way to the elementary.
Yeah, and you have raised some really good points, and we've done some research here at the NAM that shows parents are also a real important audience that we need to be getting in front of, because they have, you know, a lot of sway in addition to what their kids are exposed to, but all, you know, really important points. And I know a lot of manufacturers are doing a lot of things, Toyota included, to make sure that we are getting out there and reaching those young people. Anissa, Dave is asking if you have any advice for men listening on how to be better allies.
Oh, absolutely, I do. I have been very fortunate that I have worked with men in the industry and outside my company. I think it's very important that women are out there networking with men. And I always say that manufacturing, although it's a very male-dominated industry, it's not men versus women. It's what men need to embrace women, and women need to embrace men. And although I do have that competitive edge, and I spoke on it and touched on it earlier, I think it's also important that we work together and not divide each other. I feel like sometimes, at times, it's hard for some men to accept women in an industry that they're not used to seeing them in. And I think if we lead by example and we don't use any negativity towards that leadership, and it's strictly positive leadership, and become a resource, I think most men, and I can't say all, because we've all, I'm sure, experienced the negativity from the other gender. But at the same time, I think many men are there for are advocates, and I can name a few through my association. I'm on the board with PMPA. I was a step honoree, hence the pin there, and I was nominated by Miles Free at PMPA. And Bernie Nagel, who's also part of PMPA, he's the director. He also initiated Women of PMPA. So I think that they don't need to take leadership or ownership of it, but they do kind of need to help us women kind of, trailblaze through that process, because it is a new world. It is out of everyone's comfort zone. And so men can be advocates to women that are doing that, and can kind of be also a sounding board and mentors for the new ones that are coming abroad. I know a lot of women, depend on men as mentors. So mentorship and building confidence. I think women lack confidence, especially with the perception and the lack of knowledge of modern manufacturing. I think that many women go into this industry a little scared and intimidated. And so having a guy on their side and looking out for them can be a huge asset and a value.
Oh, sorry. So we have someone from Sukup Manufacturing, I think online, who says they employ 34% women, while the national average is 29%. Margaret, what have you found is the most successful factors in closing the gender gap in the industry?
Oh, it's a great question. And I mean, I think we still have work to do, obviously, on this. But I think it's incumbent upon both the employer and then folks who feel strongly about this within their company to demonstrate and showcase why manufacturing is so inclusive. And one of the things that we've done at Arconic is, we, through our employee resource groups, our Arconic Women's Network, which is our largest ERG here. And what we've done is, we've tried to really, one, create sort of accessibility to our female leaders at Arconic through channels of the ERG, hosting events internally, hosting external events, partnering with customers and associations to bring together different groups and getting people sort of excited about what's going on. I mean, going back to the point about how do you bring men into it, I mean, you have to, right? I mean, I think probably everyone on this webinar spends most of their time working mostly with men, and so you can't sort of overlook that. One of the things we've done with our ERG is we've brought one of our senior male leaders on board to the steering committee and really empowered him and sort of told him, you need to get out there and talk about the importance for the male side of the workforce and being inclusive. And so he's had some great programming that he's developed around that. And it's so funny because I was just thinking we had a great reception that we hosted at the air show this summer. And I think probably all of us, we go to industry events and you walk into the room and it's usually mostly men, and there some women, and some groups do better about having more women. But I had this event, and the men in my company all said, "Well, am I allowed to come?" And I said, "Yes, of course. You're going to know how it feels for us most of the time." But I think sometimes it's just kind of getting folks in a room and letting them see that it's not scary, right? And so that's been very successful for us in just internally at getting people more actively engaged through the ERG.
Well, I do want to you talk about events. Step Forward hosts events through the Institute, and they're hosted locally by the Manufacturing Institute, so I'd be real remiss if I didn't put a plug in for those regional events. You can find those on the Institute's website at the manufacturinginstitute.org/women, and you can get more information on those. Thank you for those comments, Margaret. I think one of the questions that is pretty common, what are the best ways along the event track to kind of get the conversation starting? Maybe Millie, you can take this one. I mean, to even at some of in these discussions, roundtable discussions in communities, how do you get the conversation just started?
Well, I think the main thing is all of us can say that there's a business case, and for me, it's inclusiveness. Regardless of gender, there's many different things, and we all bring different strengths to the table. So I think the story for inclusiveness in a business case, when you have people at the table making decisions with different backgrounds and different strengths and weaknesses, you come to better decision making. So what I have found is I think many times it's an unintentional bias with women in manufacturing. It's not intentional, but it's unintentional. And it's just because that's the way it's been. It's no different than any other type of cultural shift. It's something that, we've been underrepresented within the manufacturing community. So I think you have to be bold and step up and have the conversation. I do believe that for corporations, you have to have a top-down initiative. Yes, you want grassroots with the business partnering or affinity groups. You want mentoring and those type things, but the company really has to believe in this is the best for the company. And with that, then you start to ask questions. Well, why can't this female be promoted to this position? She may be the first one. She may be the only engineer or whatever it may be, but you've got to ask the questions. But I think it comes from grassroots, but also from a top-down approach. And that is showing the business case that it does make sense. And it's proven over and over again, Erin. I'm sure you have the statistics of companies that have female CEOs are a lot more profitable, or companies with their board of directors with females have a lot more profit than companies that do not. So in some ways, I think you have to have the commitment, you have to have a strategy. But for many young women, and I really didn't realize how much of an impact it was until, I started moving up in my career. If you see it, then they believe it. And I've had many young women come up and tell me that because of the position I hold. And I don't think of it that way. But they believe now that they can be president of a big manufacturing company. So I think it's not something that's going to change overnight, To kind of summarize, I think it takes a strategy. Grassroots is great, but you got to have some top-down belief and commitment. And then you have to have programs for both men and women on inclusiveness. And with the inclusiveness, how better the company can be in terms of profit, in terms of commitment to the team members or employees, the shareholders, you know, everybody.
Well, just back to your comment about women CEOs, we have done some surveying, and it won't surprise you, Millie, that when asked to rank the most impactful programs an organization offers that help in attracting and retaining women, respondents said flexible work practices, formal and informal mentorship programs, and improving the visibility of key leaders who serve as role models top the list, which I think are all, you know, things that you touched upon that I think are so critical. I do want to remind everyone that you can submit questions at #MFGWomen. Anissa, tell us a little bit about how your company has integrated women and diversity into its company strategy.
Well, my company is definitely diverse, to say the least. We have all sorts of races, of religions, obviously men and women. I have women leaders on the shop floor and in the office in management positions. I think it's important that everyone embrace it. We don't have a formal strategy. We're a small company with about 33 employees, but we do have a cultural here that accept all different backgrounds. And
Anissa, did we lose you? I think you might be frozen. Okay, we're going to try to bring her back here. Margaret, did you have a mentor that has helped you over time?
Yes, I've had several, and I really cannot overstate the importance of both mentors and sponsors for everyone, but I think particularly for women in male-dominated fields. And I would say the role of the mentor changes over time. You know, when I was a... I think...
Yeah, I think we're having some technical... Keep going, Margaret.
You know, when I was sort of starting out in my career, I had a couple of mentors who served several different roles. And, you know, I think just even how to be a good employee and, you know, how to be a good junior staffer and helping you sort of make that transition from school into the workforce is really, really helpful. But I think sort of early on, what's really useful about mentors, what I found is having them encourage you to go after opportunities that are bigger than you think you are qualified or experienced for, right? And so I had folks that said, look, you can do this job or you can take on this project, and, you know, sort of, I believe in you, you need to believe in yourself, and, you know, you should never make a change in your career that does not scare you at least a little bit, right? Because the job feels like it's a little bit beyond your means. And I think, you know, women especially sometimes will look at a job posting and say, well, I don't meet, you know, X, Y, and Z criteria. But, you know, those are guidelines, right? And I think sort of having mentors early on to challenge you and to challenge yourself is incredibly important. And then I think as you move through your career, having, you know, the sponsorship, I mean, there's sort of this difference, right? Mentors are sounding boards. They help you think through problems. They think through opportunities. Having folks within your company that see you and see the runway you have, you know, ideally there, if not somewhere else, and they can really go to, you know, pitch for you when decisions are being made about workforce, about talent, and about moving people in jobs. So it's important to sort of cultivate both of those. internally in your companies, but I would also say, you know, make sure that you're involved in professional affiliations and meeting people outside of your company that can sort of do that for you when you're thinking about making your next career move is equally important. So it's, I cannot overstate how important both are in terms of career development for women.
Yeah, and I think women, you know, we're always so stretched in so many different ways that that piece of doing stuff outside your work environment is a really important, yeah.
That's my number. I think we tend to have our list and we're always going through it and what's the next thing I have to do. What I have seen, and there's some great, very senior CEOs in the aerospace and defense industry, senior leaders. The ones who are very successful are the ones that have really engaged in those professional affiliation, those trade associations and such. And, are you going to be able to do 3 if you're a mother? Probably not. But, pick one that has meetings in the morning or at lunch, or, figure out, no one's going to make the time for you to go do those things. But, continuing to build your network and brand through those activities is critical.
Millie, how about you? Did you have a sponsor or a mentor that has been helpful and critical to your success?
Absolutely. And my story is the same as Margaret's, where it hasn't been one, it's been several over the different career opportunities that I've had. The key, and Margaret touched on it, was I feel is most important is networking. And early on in my career, I thought networking was a terrible word because I thought that was the same as kissing up. And, being a female and children and 2-income family, I came in and got things done. And then, as Margaret said, I didn't have a whole lot of time for outside activities. So I felt maybe a little negative towards it. But as I progressed through my career, what I realized was the network was the way not only to ask questions and problem solve, but it was also to open up, as Margaret stated, opportunities that I might not be aware of or I might not feel I'm qualified for. So to me, mentoring is very important. I don't think some people have one their entire career. I've been very blessed to have many, but I think networking is very important. And networking can be the same thing as having a cup of coffee with a colleague in the morning or whatever. It doesn't have to be a formal event. So that's what I would encourage people starting out is embrace your network and use it and ask questions. And I think that is a wonderful way to not only enhance your career, but learn about other opportunities.
Well, that's very well said. I think we have Anissa back. Anissa, tomorrow we're all celebrating National Manufacturing Day, which is an important day because it's about opening facilities up and introducing young people, but anyone really, to manufacturing, to come and see what it's all about. As you lead your company, Manufacturing Day is also about, developing talent. How do you go about, and why is it important to be recruiting already the next generation of female leaders?
Absolutely. I am a huge fan of Manufacturing Day. I've been participating for a few years now, and I've been very fortunate that opened up my shop from grade school, which Millie touched on, as far as exposing them. And high schoolers, we had 2 high schoolers coming yesterday and 2 more coming tomorrow. And unfortunately, not a lot of girls. I would say out of about 30 boys, you have 1 girl. And so not as many as you'd want to see. As far as recruiting, of course, the lack of the skilled workforce right now is a huge problem. I sit on a few boards and network with other business owners in manufacturing, and that's our #1 issue right now, is not that we're not getting enough business, but we don't have enough skilled workforce. So we need to get them in here. We need to educate them. We need to show them the opportunities and the pay range available to them at a young age, so we can definitely initiate a spark for them to come back and apply for a position, whether they're still in high school as an intern or later in the career. I think just the exposure will then force, you know, at the very least, an appreciation for manufacturing. I think that's as important as a skilled workforce, is having, you know, the citizens of this country realize what makers do and how important manufacturing is to this country. And as much as you expose them, that's only going to help the cause. But I do think that Manufacturing Day is a great start, but it is just one day. I open my doors throughout the year. I have at least 6 or 7 visits throughout the year. I go to the local schools. I work with the local mayor as far as grade schoolers, and just trying to, again, like what Millie said earlier, just trying to put that thought process in their minds at a very young age. And if you don't mind, I'd like to also mention 2 female engineers that I'm working with that started a new program called Spark Shop. And we had these grade schoolers come into my shop and critique their designs. They all designed a lamp. And they're starting actually a kickoff from that, and it's called Spark Shop. And what they're doing is they're incorporating in the curriculum STEM. And hopefully that will initiate manufacturing thought. And it goes into grade school. And so I think that that's equally as important. I think that that's very important, to go into the schools, not just to wait for them to come here.
That's very cool. Margaret, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, you know, here at Arconic, we love Manufacturing Day, and we are so pleased to be hosting so many events tomorrow. I mean, we've been participating for a number of years as well, and every year a number of plants that that host activities just grows and grows. And I think this year we have almost 20 plants, and not just in the U.S. Some of our overseas plants are also hosting students and field trips, and the local math club, and the sort of STEM fellows. And so that's been a really great story for us. One of the things that we've also done, not everyone lives within striking distance of a manufacturing plant. So one of the things that Arconic's done in the past is we've partnered with Discovery Foundation to do a virtual live webcast of a tour of one of our plants, our plant in Whitehall, Michigan, which creates the world's most advanced castings for jet engines. And when we did that, we broadcast it. We had over 130,000 people tune in for it. I mean, can you believe that? It's great. Wow. Yeah, and so I think especially for kids, they're so, they're all on their phones and their iPads and their Instagrams, and finding the mediums that they can plug in, even if they don't have a school that's doing something near a plant that's hosting something, is critical. And I think we got to find more opportunities to do things virtually. I think one of the things, Erin, you and I talked about over the summer when we did a panel, and you guys had done this study on manufacturing perceptions. I think one of the other issues here is getting parents involved, and sort of helping parents to think, see that, manufacturing is not dirty and it's not dangerous, and that, you can come into some Arconic plants and just see some truly amazing world-class operations. And great places to work. And so I think the more, we target a lot of local schools, but the more we can encourage parents to come along on those field trips, the better. So we're really excited about tomorrow.
Well, you guys do terrific work, there's no doubt, and we love that there are so many events taking place. I do want to touch on one thing you just said, Margaret, which, on the perception front, I think two people have this vision that manufacturing is only really one position, and that's on the production line or in the production phase. And there's sales, there's HR, there's marketing, there's engineering. There's so many facets to what goes into manufacturing. And I think that that's point that sometimes we don't always showcase all of that. You know, we present one image of the industry, and you know, one thing, because we're slowly starting to run out of time, but I do think this is an important question for all three of you, especially as women trailblazers and leaders in the industry. I want to know from each one of you, what are you doing today to improve your own work-life balance? Let's start with you, Anissa.
Work-life balance, what is that? I hope I'm not getting, are you, okay, I'm sorry, I saw a light turn off. Work-life balance, I'm a huge believer of blocking out time, determining what your high payoff activities are, building relationships and working as a team, and making sure that everyone wants the success of the company and is able to win together. And I think when you establish that, it's, you know, I've been doing this for so long, and as women, I think we're by default nurturers, and we want to take away from people, and we want to take on more for people, so they're because we're mothers, and that's the nature. But I think to have that, sometimes you just have to let go. You have to kind of be okay with things not being perfect. Otherwise, you won't see your family, or you won't do a great job on overall. You'll do a great job on a small part of your job. And that's important, is to look at big picture and focus on big picture, and enable others to take on things that you can enable them to do.
Millie?
Yes, thank you. I get this question every time. To me, work-life balance means different things to different people. What I tell people, if you're thinking 50-50, I've at least experienced it's never going to be that. Sometimes it's 90% work and 10% at home. But on the opposite spectrum, sometimes it's 90% personal and 10% at work. But what I have found is, and I encourage everybody to do this, is you have to define your own boundaries. The company is not going to do that for you. And your boundaries may change as your personal life or professional life changes. But you have to define what your boundaries are. But what I have found the key to success, at least through my career, is, number one, I was very blessed to find a good spouse. So we're a 2-income family. And, you know, he was in the technical background, but he's as supportive of my career as he is on his own. But I think the key for the company and for personal, both professionally and personally, is communication. So you just can't get up and walk out and go to a kid's ball game. You need to say, oh, I know I have something that I need to get to you in the morning, but I will have it to you in the morning, but I have to leave right now. And then keep your commitments is what's worked for me. So I think that's important. I think companies are embracing part-time and flexible work options. But I think the key, number one, is defining your own boundaries, and 2, communication, both professionally and personally, because it changes from day to day what your priorities are.
Yeah, and I really don't have much to add to either of those points, which are excellent. I mean, I think for my part, I mean, we all have the phones, the iPhones, and so technology is an enabler, I think, it absolutely is an enabler for you know, driving business, driving growth, networking, connecting. I mean, you know, where would we be without it? It's hard to believe we've only had cell phones for such a short amount of time. But, you know, the problem then is, you know, it allows you to maybe be flexible in terms of where you are and where you can work from, but then it never turns off. And manufacturing is a global business, which means it's going 24 hours a day. So I guess my point is perhaps a little bit more tactical, which is that, you know, sometimes as easy as just saying, I'm not going to turn on my phone after, I'm going to turn it off at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night or 7 p.m. at night, or, you know, and just not look at it, because, you know, I find that if I'm looking at it, I'm reading things, I don't sort of put it aside for later. It's sort of, even if I don't respond right away, I'm still processing and thinking about what's going on. So you never really get that downtime. Even if you're not actively working, it's sort of keeping work in the back of your mind. And I was on vacation this summer, and I was sitting on the beach with my phone, and a question came in about something, and, you know, I replied, and it was something that I sort of, in hindsight, I'm like, I probably didn't give the best advice because I was kind of half checked out at the time, right? And, you know, I think when you're on vacation, you should really try to be on the vacation. And I think, you know, when you have sort of your designated off times from work, you should try to step away from the phone and the computer as much as you can. And we lost Erin, but luckily we found her down the hallway.
I know, right? How fun is this? I get to do a little like, was there? And now I'm here. Well, we are going to close out this discussion. I want to thank our wonderful women leaders for being here today and sharing some insight into, you know, how they are approaching things, but also their perspective about the industry and where the industry is headed as we look to get more women leaders and involved in our industry. Before I close this out, I do want to thank Millie and Anissa and Margaret, who is still here with me, for joining us. But also I want to remind everyone that tomorrow, the Step Ahead Award nominations, they will close tomorrow, October 6th. So we want to make sure that if you know a wonderful woman who should be nominated for this program, we want to make sure that you do so. And you can do that by visiting the Manufacturing Institute's website, which is themanufacturinginstitute.org/women. We said that earlier, but I want to keep saying that. I really want to thank everyone for joining us. We had a great crowd listening to this discussion, and we hope that you'll take some of the insight and things that you heard from our panelists today and take that out into your community and engage, most importantly, on Manufacturing Day opportunities tomorrow. So thank you all, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.